Welcome back, everyone. It is middays from the Element Well studio. We're pleased to welcome now Michael Guest. He's Mississippi's congressman who represents the 3rd District. Congressman Guest, thanks so much for joining us today.
Gerard, great to talk to you again.
Yeah, man. So we're checking in with you to see what's the latest on Capitol Hill. I know we got a partial shutdown. It's not getting quite the attention in the media that the big total shutdown did back in the fall, but it's still a problem, and it doesn't seem like that Republicans and Democrats are any closer to sealing a deal to get the Department of Homeland Security fully funded.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Of the 12 spending bills, this is the only spending bill that is still outstanding. The president has signed the other 11 spending bills into law, and so all other government agencies are funded until the end of September. The Department of Homeland Security makes up roughly, I think there's roughly 22 agencies that fall under the Homeland Security umbrella, 260,000 employees. The largest agencies that people would be aware of are things such as CBP, the United States Coast Guard, TSA, FEMA, ICE, Secret Service, Homeland Security Investigations, CISA, which is important today, particularly in light of the recent cyber attack that we see was experienced by the University of Mississippi today, UMC Hospital.
Yep.
And so there are a large number of agencies that have a law enforcement mission, a first responders mission. And, Gerard, I mean, it shouldn't surprise any of your listeners, that the Democrats, the party of defund the police, the party of abolish ICE, that they don't want to pay our men and women of law enforcement. And the thing that we need to remember is that these people are working. 90+% of them are essential employees, which means they're working and they're not getting paid. And this is the second time in right at 3 months that they're going to have to be going without a paycheck. They just came out of a 6-week shutdown where they weren't paid as part of the big shutdown. Now, as we look at the more targeted shutdown, we've got men and women of law enforcement, some 260,000 families that will be going without a paycheck once the next pay period begins.
Congressman, most of the consternation and the objection coming from the other side of the aisle concerns just the operations of ICE, correct?
Correct. If you look at what the Democrats are saying that their rationale, if you will, for the shutdown involves only one agency, an agency that makes up roughly 7.5% of the total employees under the DHS umbrella. And so because of their dislike for ICE, and look, they've disliked ICE for years now.
Yeah.
I remember, I think it was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She was the first one that came out and said, abolish ICE.
Right.
And that has been really a mantle of the progressive left now for some 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And we know, look, we've got quite a few number of Democrats who want to defund the police. And so because of their desire to get rid of ICE, and I think that's ultimately what they want to do.
Yeah.
They talk about wanting to make reforms. I think the ultimate goal is to get rid of ICE in its entirety and that there not be any interior enforcement. But because of that, they're holding all the other agencies hostage, and no employee of any other agency that do crucial work are going to be paid during this shutdown.
Right. So, and just recently, I think I came across a report that the Democrats in Congress are trying to halt plans for some new detention centers, that they're objecting to that, right?
That's correct. Look, anything really that falls under the Homeland umbrella, there was money in the reconciliation bill for DHS, particularly for ICE, to build new detention facilities to increase detention capacity. We as Republicans, we think that's important because it helps expedite people through the legal process.
Yeah.
What we saw under the Biden-Harris administration is people would come across the border, They would do a quick screening of those individuals. Often that screening was very insufficient, in my opinion. They would then be given a notice to appear in court. Sometimes those notices were 2, 3, in some cases 4 years later. They were released into the interior and in many cases never seen again. With the detention capacity, this allows us to be able to know where those individuals are, expedite them through the process, let them make their claims of asylum, which we know that 90+% are denied, and then quickly return them to their country of origin. And so Republicans support the additional detention beds, but as you mentioned, Democrats are opposed to that. They want to go back to the catch and release program that we saw under the Biden-Harris administration.
You're right. They don't want ICE agents to wear masks. They want to require body cameras. And I think there's some interest on the Republican side on the body cameras, is there not?
There is. As a matter of fact, in the bill that we negotiated, the Homeland Security bill that was negotiated with Democrats, the bill that they later withdrew their support for, there was substantial funding in that bill for body cameras. There was money in the bill for de-escalation training.
Yeah.
There were things in there which we thought were bipartisan in nature, that we thought would be a good faith effort for us to try to work with Democrats on those issues where we could find common ground. And so, I think you find widespread support of that. I mean, I think you start looking at other areas such as their desire for judicial warrants, wanting to give are requiring them to follow the guidelines of the jurisdiction in which they're working as far as how their policies are carried out. Things like that I think are non-negotiable. But there are things that Republicans and Democrats do agree on, and I think body cameras is a great example of that.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can get this resolved. I know we're running pretty close to a point where there won't be sufficient funding to pay, right, the TSA folks.
That's right. There is a possibility. I mean, Trump was able to use tariff money during the shutdown in the fall to try to pay military, the men and women that serve in the military. Yep. I don't know if that would be something that the president would try to do, but you're right. I mean, you're going to start seeing this as we see that we're going to have instances for which law enforcement needs to respond, whether that be a cyber attack like we've seen here at UMC, if there's another natural disaster and FEMA has to respond. As TSA agents at some point are going to have to continue to work. You see the potential for a slowdown in air travel, which we saw during the previous shutdown. And so while the impact has not yet been felt, I think over the next probably week and a half, you're going to see more and more of the impact on our federal workforce, and it is going to impact the economy and the everyday lives of Mississippians.
Congressman, I know you hear it as well, but just from the perspective of a voter and a citizen, man, we sure do spend a lot of time just wrangling about these sorts of details just to get basic funding up so that you guys can address some of the more critical issues. But you got limited cycles, and it seems like all the air gets taken out of the room on this.
Yeah, and look, the Democrats now have become the party of not only defund the police and abolish ICE, they're now the party of government shutdown. I mean, they led the longest government shutdown in the fall. We're out of that shutdown. We work extremely hard, the appropriators on both sides of the aisle, both appropriators in the House and Senate. We believe that we have a deal that the Democrats have told us that they would support if it came to the floor. We were able to get that passed out of the House, but in light of what happened in Minnesota, we see that the Democrats in the Senate refuse to support that. And look, as long as we have the filibuster, as long as it takes a minority of Democrats to be able to shut down the government, they're going to use that ability, Gerard, in my opinion, to stop the momentum of the Trump administration. Yeah. And I think they want to see this shutdown happen during the middle of President Trump's State of the Union. I think they're going to use that. They're going to publicize that But look, this shutdown is strictly on the backs of the Democratic Party. There is no way that they can blame Republicans. We have tried to work with Democrats. We have done everything within our power, and they submit a list of unreasonable demands and expect us to meet that. And Republicans are not going to meet the demands of the Democrats. And they will just continue to hold our federal law enforcement hostage.
Man, oh, man. We got a break right now. If you can hang, we got a short segment. After that, we can dig into a couple of other topics.
Would love to. Yes, sir.
Congressman Michael Guest is joining us from Washington. We're in the Element Wealth studio. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. Middays from the Element Wealth studio. We're visiting with Congressman Michael Guest. So, Congressman, the SAVE Act, got to talk to you about that. That did make its way through the House. It has been sent over to the Senate. I believe one Democrat in the House voted for it. Ultimately, the bill, once it made it to the floor, I believe all Republicans did support it. There was a bunch of rumors out there about Representative Thomas Massey opposing it. But when I dug into it, it looks like he voted against the rule that allowed the legislation to advance. Once it did come up for a vote on the House floor, he voted for it, correct? That's my understanding.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that is correct. He voted against the rule, but once the bill came up for final passage, Thomas Massey and, as you said, all other Republicans, and there was a single Democrat, Henry Cuellar,
right,
who represents a district in South Texas, who actually supported the legislation as well. So at least we can say that there was bipartisan support for the SAVE Act.
But what's amazing is, and I'm sure you heard it as well in your position and your colleagues there, is all the fear-mongering from the Democrats about all this is it's another thing where there's so much misunderstanding and misinformation, I should say. There's not a requirement that you have to prove your citizenship to vote at the precinct, at the ballot box. The requirement is to prove your citizenship to register to be able to vote.
That's right. A one-time requirement that you have to prove when you originally register. And so hopefully individuals are registering very early in life, 18, 19, 20. And then once you've met that requirement, you don't have to meet it again. Now, there was a requirement for photo ID, but many states, including Mississippi, we have photo ID. It works extremely well. I think it helps prevent voter fraud and increases election integrity. And so, if you look at the legislation and you really dig in, there's, while you're right, there's a lot of fear-mongering by the Democrats. What they are saying is not true and not accurate. And so I do think it is a great piece of legislation. I'm glad we were able to get it out of the House with all Republican support. And look, if you look at, and I know you've probably talked about this, if you look at polling nationally, voter ID polls at over 80%, over 70% of Democrats support voter ID, over 90% of Republicans support it. And so it is a very popular issue that the Democrats are pushing back on. And the only thing I can think of is they're pushing back on it because they don't want to prevent the possibility of voter fraud.
I guess so. And we should also point out this only applies because the Congress only has the power to federal elections. Right. So we're not changing the way local elections.
Correct. So if California and New York in their state elections or local elections, if they want to have different rules and they want to let people vote without an ID, and if they want to allow all kind of things which could promote to shenanigans within the election process on a state election, they're able to do that. This only applies to federal elections, which we hold every 2 years. But I do think that it is a great piece of legislation. I applaud Chip Roy and others who drafted that. And I hope and pray that we're able to attach it to something that must pass in the Senate so that ultimately this will become the law of the land.
Yeah, because we got to get past the filibuster, right, in the Senate to pass this as a standalone bill.
That's correct. Yes, sir. That is correct. So whether we attach it to a future funding bill or something else of that nature, I think we're going to have to make sure that we find a vehicle, a legislation that will have to pass the Senate and add this to it in hopes that it can become law particularly the voter ID. Would love to see that in place before the November election.
Agree. Couple of minutes left. Congressman Michael Guest is our guest. Anything you're working on in particular? Anything flowing through your committee?
I mean, one of the things that I'm tracking is the events in the Middle East.
Yeah.
We have seen a huge buildup of military assets in the Middle East over the last several weeks. That intensity has increased just over the last several days. We now have two aircraft carrier battle groups there in the region. The Abraham Lincoln and recently the Ford, which is, I think, just right outside of the Mediterranean. We've seen a huge surge in particularly our aerial assets as well as our naval assets.
Yeah.
And we know that there are ongoing negotiations between the U.S. and Iran over Iran's nuclear program. But it does seem to me, Gerard, just what I'm seeing, that it appears more and more likely that there will be a military strike on Iran in the foreseeable future. And I would not be surprised if we don't see something happen before the State of the Union on Tuesday night. Again, this is just information that I'm getting off of publicly available information. There's not any briefings or anything.
Okay.
But I do think it is something that we need to pay close attention to because we have the largest buildup of military assets in that region since the Gulf War in the early 90s.
More deployed this morning, as I have seen in the news. Well, we appreciate you joining us, as always, Congressman Michael Guest. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot, man.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Gerard. Good talking to you.
Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.